So we'll start with prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashyat Deshatarine जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. We'll also chant this prayer. जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा. So today we are going to discuss about another great Goswami, that is Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And this presentation is dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the worldwide Hare Krishna movement. So yesterday we had a wonderful discussion on the pastimes of Sanatana Goswami and the beautiful verses of Padma Purana, which were talking about the essence of remembering the Lord always and the temporariness of this body. And so from the wonderful life of Sanatana Goswami, today we move to discuss about the life of Gopala Bhatta Goswami. So unlike Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, the name of Gopala Bhatta Goswami is not very much mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. However, there is some description about his childhood and his meeting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll try to look some aspects of that today and some other aspects of Gopala Bhatta Goswami. So before we start, we'll start with one of the verses from Shad Goswami Astakam. So this says, Shri Gauranga Gunanu Varnana Vidhau Shraddha Samriddhi Anvitau Papotapa Nikrintanau Tanubritam Govinda Ganamritai Anandam Buddhi Vardhanaika Nipunau Kaivalya Nistarakau Vande Rupa Sanatanau Raghu Yugau Shri Jiva Gopalakau. So this is the third stanza of the wonderful Sad Goswami Astakam. The Sad Goswami Astakam was written by Srinivas Acharya, and here he is glorifying the wonderful qualities of the six Goswamis. So in this verse, there are some very important aspects of the six Goswamis, and what do they do? So if you look at the first one, Shri Gauranga Gunanu Varnana. So one of the things that the six Goswamis always do is to explain or elaborate the great qualities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as we have seen earlier, that Raghunath Das Goswami, when he came to Vrindavan, Rupa and Sanatana, So Raghunath Das Goswami, after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then Swarup Damodar, he felt very dejected. He came to Vrindavan and he thought um he will not live because he was so despondent, he was so sad that both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Swarup Damodar left. Now, what is my role? What will I do? I'm so sad in the separation. So he wanted to actually um, fall from Govardhan Hill and take out his life. But as soon as he went and met Rupa and Sanatana, as instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatana told that you have spent so much time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now you should explain the qualities and the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is so important, so you should not give up your life. So, when encouraged in this way, Raghunath Das Goswami, he agreed upon this and he used to every day spend certain number of hours to explain the life and the qualities and activities of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Similarly, in this case of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Gopala Bhatta Goswami also had considerable amount of time that he could spend with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, when he came to Vrindavan, even the elder Goswamis, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, even they used to ask Gopala Bhatta Goswami to explain the qualities and the activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Sri Rangam. So this is one very important aspect of the six Goswamis, that they were always glorifying the great qualities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and helping people understand who Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. Further, it is being said that they can remove the sinful distress from the sinful reactions. Papa uttapa nikrintanau. So the distress that is coming from the sinful reactions of the individual, these Goswamis are so expert that simply by their association and by their following their footsteps, one can actually overcome all these distress of sinful reactions. Further, they Govinda Ganamritai. Further, they gave various songs about Lord Govinda. In fact, all these six Goswamis have composed at least some of the other literature, and therefore they were always giving people an opportunity to glorify Lord Govinda in different forms. And further, they were also increasing Anandam Buddhi Vardhanaika Nipunau. They were very experts in increasing the transcendental ocean of bliss. And further, the most important point that is being mentioned here is that Kaivalya Nistarakau. Kaivalya Nistarakau, meaning they who are the saviors from impersonal liberation. So they were very against the conception of Mayavadi understanding of the highest perfection. So the Mayavadis thought that the highest perfection is to merge in the Brahman. But as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who started this movement of Hare Krishna mantra, to remove the impersonalism. In fact, one of the places it is mentioned in Charitamrita that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially brought this Hare Krishna Maha mantra, one of the reasons being to remove impersonalism. And six Goswamis, being the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, followed in his footsteps and also propagated this personalism, and they were dead against impersonalism. Actually, I found a message today where Prabhupada is also demonstrating this very similar quality, Kaivalya Nistarakau. That means who are saviors who are totally against this conception of Mayavadi philosophy. So I'll just read this. So Prabhupada says, I don't make any compromise with these rascals. Even if I don't get any disciple, I will be satisfied. So when Prabhupada is saying rascals here, is referring to the Mayavadis. So Prabhupada is explaining this further. The whole world is spoiled for these Mayavadis. Therefore, I am very much hard. We must be harder and harder. I don't make any compromise with these rascals. No words, no, no. I will never make that. Even if I don't get any disciple, I will be satisfied. But I cannot make any compromise as these rascals. I cannot make. Chanakya Pandit Prabhupada quotes then, if I create one moon, that is sufficient. I don't want many stars. That was my Guru Maharaja's principle, and that is my principle. What is the use of having number of fools and rascals? If one man understands rightly, he can deliver the whole world. So this is a morning walk conversation Prabhupada is having in Bombay in March 23rd. So Prabhupada is explicitly making here that I do not make any compromise. Rather, we must be very, very hard. Prabhupada says the whole world is spoiled because of Mayavadis, and therefore I do not want to make any compromise. And Prabhupada says, I will be satisfied even if I don't get any disciples. But I do not want to make compromise with the Mayavadis. Further, Prabhupada quotes this wonderful example given by Chanakya Pandit, where the sunlight, where the light received from the moon and sun is sufficient to brighten up the earth, then what is the use of having so many stars in the sky? So similarly, Prabhupada is saying one disciple who can understand the philosophy of personalism, he is much greater and he is sufficient to deliver the entire world if one can understand properly. So, Kaivalya Nistarakau. So, this is another great principle of Gaudiya Vaishnavism that all the acharyas have been very, very hard against the Mayavada school of thought. So the translation goes, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Dasa Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who are very much enriched in understanding of Lord Chaitanya and were thus expert in narrating his transcendental qualities. They can purify all conditioned souls from the reactions of their sinful activities by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. As such, they are very expert in increasing the limits of the ocean of transcendental bliss, and they are the saviors of the living entities from the devouring mouth of liberation. So, as we can see, this is the quality of great Vaishnavas. They can purify all the conditioned souls. So, simply by associating, by hearing the glories of the six Goswamis, they are very, very potent, that they can really elevate us in our spiritual life. So, as I mentioned earlier, amongst all these Goswamis, Gopala Bhatta Goswami's activities are briefly, or in fact very less, mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we will try to see how did Gopala Bhatta Goswami meet Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in fact, if you remember carefully, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first met Raghunath Das Goswami immediately after the sannyas. And after that, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to South India tour. He came to Jagannath Puri, and from Jagannath Puri, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did this Dakshin Bharat Yatra, or the South India tour, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited various prominent places, and he along the river Godavari, he met Ramananda Raya. Then he came down to Mangalagiri and further down towards Tirupati, and then he travels into the southernmost part until Kanyakumari from taking the route to Tamil Nadu. So in this process, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu travels to Sri Rangam. So as we discussed even during the journey to Janmashtami, that the Lord Sri Rangam, the Lord Ranganatha in Sri Rangam is very, very beautiful. He is so beautiful that he's lying down, he's so huge, and one cannot even see with just one breath of an eye. Within just one shot, one has to move one's eyes and head to see the complete form of the Lord. So Lord is very, very majestic, very beautiful, and it is said that there is a pastime where Ramanujacharya was residing at Sri Rangam for some time. then there was a person living in that area who was attracted to a woman's eyes, and he was always trying to glance into the eyes of that woman. And he was so enamored that he would always be behind that woman and be attracted by the eyes of that woman. Seeing this, one day Ramanujacharya thought that let me take him to Sri Ranganatha. So he invites this person to come along with him, and then he takes him to the altar of Sri Ranganatha, and then he asks Pujari to show the lamp closer to the eyes of Lord Ranganatha. And as soon as this uh, person who sees the beautiful lotus-like eyes of Lord Ranganatha, he becomes captivated by this beautiful eyes and form of the Lord. And then he gives up his interest in other material activities. So it is being said that Lord Ranganatha is so attractive, and he is very, very kind to devotees. And as we also know from the earlier discussions, that Sri Rangam is the largest functioning Hindu temple in the world. So it has like 7 walls around it that are so beautiful. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also visited this important pilgrimage place in his travel to South India. So during this travel, so after traveling from Papanashram, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu travels to Sri Rangam. So here, so as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Sri Rangam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took bath in river Kaveri. And after taking bath in river Kaveri, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the temple of Sri Rangam. So as soon as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered Sri Rangam temple, um, as soon as he entered the temple of Sri Rangam and he took the darshan of Lord, he was chanting, dancing, and he was quite a sight for the people, because they never saw, because as we know, South Indians rarely dance, especially in the temples. So the people were very much surprised to see a sannyasi being loudly chanting, dancing, and being ecstatic and offering prayers. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was completely out of his senses, ecstatic, seeing the beautiful form of Lord Ranganatha. So, and seeing his performance, everyone was struck with awe and wonder. Then, seeing this, the head priest of the temple, Sri Rangam, was Venkata Bhatta. So he saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was also very learned and a great Vaishnava Brahmana. So he could realize the greatness of this sannyasi and the Lord, and then he immediately could recognize that he is actually Supreme Lord himself. So he, being very intelligent, he asks Lord, he invites Lord to visit his house. And as a sannyasi, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to the houses of Brahmanas, whoever would invite for his lunch and for his food. So there, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meets Venkata Bhatta and his other family members. So Venkata Bhatta had 2 other Vaishnava Brahmana brothers who were also exalted. One of them is Prabodhananda Saraswati, and the other one being Tirumala Bhatta. So they were also the great devotees of Lord Ranganatha, and they all met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Venkata Bhatta, being very intelligent, he knew that the day Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came Sri Rangam was the beginning of Chaturmasya. As we are also in the Chaturmasya period, except for we have a Purushottam Mas. So Sri Venkata Bhatta told Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that now is the time of Chaturmasya. Now the roads will be wet, the travel will be difficult. Why don't you stay here for 4 months? And as we know, in the ancient time, there were no proper roads, and it was very difficult to travel with raining season. There's no place to stay in between the travel and things like that. So on this plea on this request of Venkata Bhatta, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed to stay at the house of Venkat Bhatta. And so it is also very important to note how Venkata Bhatta treated Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he visited their home. So as soon as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited the house of Venkat Bhatta washed the feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, offered him water and a proper seat to sit, and then offered lunch, which was offered to the Lord. So in this way, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed to stay in Sri Rangam, Venkatabhatta was very intelligent. He knew how to take association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So instead of speaking anything else, he immediately starts saying, चातुर्मास्य कृपा करी रहा मोरा घरे कृष्ण कथा कही कृपया उद्धार अमारे. So immediately, this is a great quality of a devotee. He is eager to hear about the Lord. So immediately, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed at the house of Venkat Bhatta says, "Please speak about Lord Krishna's pastimes and kindly deliver me by your mercy." So the mercy of the Lord is very, very important. And also, hearing about the Lord is very, very important. So, considering these two important things, Venkata Bhatta is immediately asking. So then, uh, so it is the great fortune of Venkata Bhatta and his family members that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed for 4 months and described the various pastimes of the Lord, and describing the various transcendental mellows of Lord Krishna. So in this regard, there is one important pastime that takes place, which is very important to note for, especially for Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and that pastime kind of talks about the mode of worship. So in Sri Rangam, as we know, Lord Ranganatha or Lord Krishna in the form of Narayana is being worshipped. And as we also know that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu propagated the worship of Radha and Krishna. So as we can see, there is a difference in the kind of worship that is being done in Sri Rangam and the worship that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas do. So what is the difference in these two forms of worship? So that is was the context of discussion between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Venkata Bhatta. This is beautifully given in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, 9th chapter Madhya Leela, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travel is being described. So here, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts a discussion with Venkata Bhatta. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks a question. He says, Prabhu kahe, Bhatta, तुम्हारा लक्ष्मी ठाकुरानी कांता वक्षः स्थिता pativrata shiromani. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling Venkata Bhatta, your worshipable goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, always remains on the chest of Narayana, and she is certainly the most chaste woman in the creation. However, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further continues, Amara Thakura Krishna, Gopa Go Charaka, Sadhvi Hana, Kene Chahe Tanahara Sangama. However, my Lord is Lord Sri Krishna, a cowherd boy, who is engaged in tending cows. Why is that Lakshmi, being such a chaste wife, wants to associate with my Lord? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is bringing this point that Lord Lakshmi resides in the chest of Lord Narayana, and she is the most chaste woman. Then, why is that my worshipable Lord, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying Lord Krishna, who is a cowherd boy, why is that Lakshmi, being such a chaste wife of Lord Narayana, wants to associate with my Lord? So immediately when this question was asked, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was testing the understanding of Venkata Bhatta as how did he understand this aspect of Lakshmi ji trying to associate with Lord Krishna. So it is said that Lord Lakshmi in order to associate with Lord Krishna, did a lot of tapasya and underwent so many regulatory principles so as to find the association of Lord Krishna. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further states that even Kaliya, who has not performed so much of tapasya, could get the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then why is that the goddess of fortune has to take so much trouble for this end that she has to perform so many austerities, giving up all other desires and observing austere oaths? Why is that so? So how is that Kaliya is able to get so easily the lotus dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, whereas Lakshmi ji has to work so hard through various austerities? So then Venkat Bhatta answers, Bhatta kahe, Krishna Narayana ekha hi swarupa, Krishnete adhika leela Vaidag, Vaidagyadi Rupa. So here, Venkat Bhatta is saying, Lord Krishna and Lord Narayana are one and the same, but the pastime of Krishna are more relishable due to their sportive nature. So, Venkat Bhatta is making an argument that Krishna and Narayana are non-different, and therefore, the only difference being that Krishna has few more pastimes or few more activities that is of sportive in nature. Apart from that, there is no difference, and in that sense, it is like the same person in two different dresses. And therefore, Lakshmi ji, the goddess Lakshmi, trying to associate with Lord Krishna is non-different from associating with Lord Narayana, and therefore it is not to be seen to be that her chastity is of any inferior because of associating with Lord Krishna. Since Krishna and Narayana are the same personality, Lakshmi's association with Krishna does not break her vow of chastity. Rather, it was in great fun that the goddess of fortune wanted to associate with Lord Krishna. So this is the argument that Venkatabhatta brings in, that in the highest stages of transcendental realization, Narayana and Krishna, there is no difference, and therefore it is to be considered that they are both same. By saying this, that he wanted to make that argument that there is no loss of chastity, the vow of chastity of Mother Lakshmi was not broken. So in this way, he was further elaborating few more points regarding the similarity between Lord Krishna and Lord Narayana. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Prabhu kahe, dosha nahi, iha ami jani, rasa na paila Lakshmi, shastra iha suni. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is again stating something, but again it's very interesting to see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, Shastre iha nahi suni. So it is, we hear this from revealed scriptures about what? About that Mother Lakshmi could not enter into the rasa dance. Although she was performing so many austerities and trying to associate with the Lord, and even then, after doing all that, she was not allowed to enter into the rasa dance of the Lord. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further continues that, saying, when Lord Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Leela, the gopis were embraced around the neck of the Lord's arm. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddesses of fortune or the other consorts in the spiritual world. Nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets, girls those whose bodily lustre and aroma exactly remember the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. So this is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoting to state that only the damsels of Raja or the gopis could have this opportunity to be embraced by the Lord, while no other goddess or even goddesses of fortune or anyone from heavenly planets, or what to say about the most beautiful girls in the world, they never get an opportunity to associate with the Lord like this. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explaining this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam states, now can you tell me why the goddess of fortune Lakshmi could not enter the rasa dance? The authorities of Vedic knowledge could not enter the dance and associate with Krishna. So, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making further more elaboration that even the sages or the great authorities of the Vedic literature, they could not enter, although they were very great. But still, they could not also enter into the rasa dance, and neither goddess of fortune Lakshmi could enter into the rasa dance. Now, what is the reason for this? So now, hearing these tough questions being asked by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Venkata Bhatta submits himself to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, Ami Jiva Shudra Buddhi Sahaje Asthira Ishware Leela Koti Samudra Gambhira. So he is comparing, Venkata Bhatta is comparing the pastimes and the uh, greatness of Lord's activities, Koti Samudra Gambhira. It's like millions of oceans deep. The pastimes of Lord Krishna are like millions of oceans of deep. How can I understand? Ami Jiva. I'm just a ordinary human being. Shudra Buddhi. My intelligence is limited. Sahaja Asthira. And my intelligence is also very easily agitated. And therefore, how can I understand Ishware Leela Koti Samudra Gambhira? So, Gopal Bhatta is wonderfully submitting. 1 second. Just 1 second, there is something. My battery is. I'm sorry for that. So immediately Gopala Bhatta could understand that I'm not in a position to answer all these intricate understandings of Lord Krishna's Leelas and why Mother Goddess Lakshmi wasn't allowed into the Rasa Leela. So then Venkata Bhatta says something very, very important. Tumi sakshat se Krishna, jana nija karma, yare janaha, se jane tomara leela marma. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna Himself. You know the purpose of your activities, and the person whom you enlighten can also understand your pastimes. So, Venkata Bhatta was so fortunate that he could recognize that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Sri Krishna himself. And therefore, he's saying, you understand your own activities. And person whom you enlighten can also understand the pastimes. So to hear from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to hear from his immediate 6 disciples, as we have seen continuously throughout, that is the way to enter into the transcendental understandings of Lord Krishna. Without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his direct disciples, it is not possible to enter into the intricate aspects of understanding what is Krishna, who is Krishna, what are his activities, and even the highest transcendental activities of the Lord as Rasa Leela and other things. So, without purifying one's senses, without being purified of mental contamination and the fruity mentality, one cannot penetrate into the spiritual subject matter. And the 6 Goswamis who are the most advanced, the 6 Goswamis who have controlled all the senses, master of all senses, they were the direct disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and most advanced, elevated spiritualists, and they could penetrate into this transcendental understanding, and through them we can understand. So here, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replies in answer to the request of Venkata Bhatta that please explain me further how to understand this. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Krishna has special characteristic that he attracts everyone's heart by the mellow of his personal conjugal love. So from here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts to explain that only one who follows in the footsteps of the gopis, the way the gopis worship the Lord Krishna, that is the actual mode of worship one should take to achieve a place in the transcendental realm of Raja. So, as we see, the worship of Lord Narayana is in the mood of awe and reverence. That means there is a certain distance that the devotees maintain from the Lord because they see the superiority of the Lord, and therefore they see his opulences and they see the living entity's limitations and the differences, and therefore they offer their respects in the form of awe and reverence. Whereas the worship of the gopis is not distinguished by the differences between the Lord and the living entities. The gopis, being enamored by the love for Krishna, and they do not see the distinction that whether Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead or whether he is not Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are simply interested in associating with Lord Krishna and serving him intensely with deep love. In this relationship, in this form of worship, there is no consideration whether Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead or not. And as we see in one of the pastimes of Rasa Leela, where Lord Krishna disappears during the Rasa Leela, and the gopis start searching for Krishna, and as the gopis search for Krishna, the 400 Narayana form appears. And although the gopis knew that Lord Narayana is Supreme Personality of Godhead, so they worship Lord Narayana, they offer their respects, and they go back again to search for Krishna. So basically, the point here being that the gopis have no other object of love except for Lord Shri Krishna himself, and they worship in the form of madhurya or in the form of conjugal love. And this form of worship is very different from Aishwarya form of worship. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to explain the differences between these two forms of worship, and concludes that uh, the authorities in the Vedic literature who are known as Shruti Ganas worship Lord Krishna as the ecstasy of the gopis and followed in the footsteps. So this is to be considered as the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives furthermore explanation as how this is the highest form of worship that one can do. And as we see, this is also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy that the worship of the gopis is to be considered the highest. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that how worshipping Lord in this form of Madhurya form of worship is to be considered the highest. So in this way, the Venkata Bhatta and his brothers, and they were all attracted by the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this gradually began to worship Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in this way, they used to have continuous discussions over the 4 months. And the son of Venkata Bhatta is Gopala Bhatta. So Gopala Bhatta was a young boy of like 7 years old, and he used to hear these pastimes when narrated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was so attracted by this, and on the advice of his father, he used to render some menial service to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way, Lord Gopala Bhatta got a lot of mercy and association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Imagine Gopala Bhatta getting 4 months of association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was so deeply touched by the association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he developed the deep love for serving Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is one of the very important quality of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, that his because of his association with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and hearing the instructions from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he developed intense desire and love for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, one day, Gopala Bhatta Goswami, as the 4 months is about to pass away and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is about to leave Sri Rangam, Gopala Bhatta desired in his dream that can I see the beautiful form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before sannyas, with beautiful hair and the beautiful Lord Chaitanya in his youth. How was he? So before sannyas. So as soon as he was intensely feeling to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this form, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in his dream and shows him the two-handed Krishna form, and also Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as before sannyas. So seeing this, Gopala Bhatta was deeply grateful and became very ecstatic. And after this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives him very specific instructions, saying that after the departure of your parents, you should leave Sri Rangam and go to Sri Vrindavan Dham, and there, under the guidance of Rupa and Sanatana, whom I will instruct, that they will guide you further in rendering devotional service. So in this way, Gopala Bhatta Goswami developed deep love for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and having heard these instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very eager. When will that day come so that he can go and serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission in Vrindavan? And so after the leaving of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gopala Bhatta Goswami, under the guidance of Prabodhananda Saraswati, took guidance and initiation, and he studied various subject matters, so like Sanskrit, rhetoric, logic. Uh, so he studied many subjects and became very expert, and his knowledge became far and widespread. People knew that he is very, very scholarly, very expert in the scriptures, and people were very eager to come and see him. And Gopala Bhatta Goswami is also so now he is no more following the Ramanujara Sampradaya, but he is more into the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was also considered to be, he's also considered to be Ananga Manjari. So one of the confidential servitor of Lord Krishna. And one important thing that we all should remember as soon as we hear of Gopala Bhatta Goswami is Gopala Bhatta's humility. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, when he wanted to write Chaitanya Charitamrita, he went to all the Vaishnava, the great exalted devotees in Vrindavan, and wanted to take their blessings and their permission before writing Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in this process, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also goes to Gopala Bhatta Goswami and requests his blessings and permission. Gopala Bhatta Goswami says that I would give my blessings only in case if you do not mention my name in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami agrees that I will not include your name in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and therefore, I think it's found only in one or two places, the name of Gopal Bhatta Goswami in the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is another great humility, a great character of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, that he never wanted any name or fame. And as soon as his parents departed from this world, he traveled all the way to Vrindavan, and there he rendered service alongside Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. And one of the very important aspects of service that Gopala Bhatta Goswami was doing was he used to recite Srimad Bhagavatam to all Goswamis. So it is said if all the 6 Goswamis were sitting, Gopala Bhatta Goswami would recite or read Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other Goswamis would listen, and Jiva Goswami would make comments on after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So this was one of the activities of Gopala Bhatta Goswami in Vrindavan. And one of the perhaps the most important thing that we associate with Gopala Bhatta Goswami is that he constructed the temple of Sri Radharaman temple, the beautiful deity of Radharaman in Vrindavan. So there is another beautiful pastime of how Lord appeared as Sri Radharaman, and so since the time of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, the Lord in the form of Sri Radharaman is being worshipped in Vrindavan, and this is considered as one of the major temples, 7 temples of Vrindavan. And Radharaman is so beautiful that people from all over places come to visit and take darshan of the beautiful form of Sri Radharaman. And there's beautiful pastime as how Gopala Bhatta Goswami travels to Gandaki river in Nepal, and from there he finds the Shaligrama Shila and comes back to Vrindavan to worship. And it is also important to note that Gopala Bhatta Goswami wrote many literatures like Satkriya Sara, Deepika, and he also edited books like Hari Bhakti Vilas, and he wrote commentary to Krishna Karnamrita, and he also wrote forward to Shat Sandarbhas written by Jiva Goswami. So although not very much popular as other Goswamis in terms of writings, but Gopala Bhatta Goswami also had given a lot of emphasis on Vaishnava Smritis, and he is actually more famous that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed him that your disciples will actually Rupa and Sanatana will write most of the literatures, and then the other Goswamis, and you and your disciples will be very much prominent in distributing these literatures. And therefore Gopala Bhatta Goswami had this great disciple Srinivas Acharya. So when Srinivas Acharya comes to Vrindavan, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in the dream of Sri Rupa and Sanatana and tells that he should go to Jiva Goswami and then learn from him and become initiated from Gopala Bhatta Goswami. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami initiates Srinivas Acharya, and Srinivas Acharya, along with Shyamananda Prabhu and Narottama Das Thakur, they distribute these books written, the great literatures written by the six Goswamis. They carry all these books to Bengal, and they spread among the Gaudiya Vaishnavas of the Bengal. And that's another beautiful pastime as how the first book distribution started and what all difficulties did they take for distributing the literature of the six Goswamis. So Gopala Bhatta Goswami is widely popular, widely known for his disciple and for helping this propagation of the literature given by the six Goswamis, and most importantly the Rupa and Sanatana. So these are some of the aspects of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, and Gopala Bhatta Goswami Samadhi is very right next to the Radharaman temple, and it's a very nice place to visit and take the blessings of Gopala Bhatta Goswami. And he never married. He always remained a brahmachari and then took sannyas eventually. And he dedicated completely his life to the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is said that when he heard, because of hearing in his very childhood the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he deeply carried them in his heart and never deviated from the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and wanted to always, he had this intense desire because from the very childhood he got this association. So always he was longing, when will I go to Vrindavan, when will I be a servant in the movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this intense desire, intense devotion to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much exemplified in the life of Gopala Bhatta Goswami. Then his great learning because of Prabodhananda Saraswati and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's blessings, and then further under the guidance of Rupa and Sanatana. These are some very important aspects, and he's also known as the originator of Vaishnava Smriti, as he was helping especially Sanatana Goswami in his writings, and then in propagating the Vaishnava literatures. So these are some things about Gopala Bhatta Goswami. Not very much is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita specifically about the activities of Gopala Bhatta Goswami because of his humility. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami doesn't write so much, but it is very nice to visit the temple of Radharaman. Maybe some other time we can discuss how the Lord appears in the form of Radharaman and other related things. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Narottam, Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I have a small question. When you mentioned about the shloka of saluting the six Goswamis, the word, the last line emphasizes on how they were helping, people. not to go into the impersonal form, and especially the word Kaivalya is mentioned. So can we directly take Kaivalya word to be an impersonal merging of Brahman kind of thing, or does it have any other meaning? Because we usually in South India, like some of the Vaishnavas also use, they want to go to Kaivalya and things like that. How do we understand that if it is impersonal, purely impersonal?
Okay, just give me a minute. So you mean to say the Vaishnavas also use the same word? And
Yes,
how is it different from the word that is used by the Mayavadis?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Um, so I am not completely sure. Maybe I can check and get back to you on this.
Sure, Prabhu, sure. Basically, the word, the reference I can quote is like Annamaya is a Vaishnava, right? We consider him as a pure Vaishnava, but he uses this word in his songs, Kaivalya, from
Mm-hmm.
Venkateshwar.
Mm-hmm.
So we should. I just want to understand, like, is there, but at one point of time, I would understand Kaivalya as impersonal submerging of Brahman. And other point, when Vaishnavas use these words, how do we understand? Does it have two meanings or things like?
So I think too, one understanding of the meaning is that Kaivalyam refers to oneness or transcendental. So now this oneness can be understood in different ways from the perspective of Mayavada and Vaishnava. So, in the Vaishnava understanding of oneness is that of being one with the will of the Lord. Whereas in case of the Mayavadis understanding of oneness, as described with the word Kaivalya, they would mean merging into the Brahman and acquiring liberation. So I think that could be one way to understand that the word Kaivalya can mean oneness, but the way it is interpreted from Mayavadis is different from the way Vaishnavas interpret use that word.
Sure, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. If there are no questions, I have a small video to play, and then just a minute. I'm just trying to share this. Ante kale I'm sorry, I think the internet is very slow. But just to let you know, tomorrow there's a Vaishnava song, Tulsi Maharani, and the meaning of it. And then we have Jada Bharta's pastime discussion with Rahugana. And then we also have some wonderful practical spiritual discussions on how to handle anxiety. And so please do join us. And before we end, I would request everyone to come in front of the cameras. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Gopal Bhatt Goswami ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you all for joining for another day of discussion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.